This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you're watching this video, you probably have at least some idea what Gloomhaven is. It's a dungeon crawling board game with just an absolutely ridiculous sense of scale. It's got unlockables and maps and stickers, and even more ambitious and elaborate snow-themed sequel, as well as the scaled down and more accessible prequel/tutorial version of the game, Jaws of the Lion. That's probably the one I'm gonna start out with. Of course, I have always been tempted to play these games. Who in our community hasn't been tempted to play Gloomhaven at one point? I love dungeon crawling board games. I loved Imperial Assault. I love Descent. I love Hero Quest. But as silly as it sounds, the one thing holding me back from playing Gloomhaven is actually what those games have that these games don't. Ridiculous amount of miniatures. And if you aren't aware, in these games, the Gloomhaven games, the player characters do have plastic miniatures, but pretty much everything else is just a cardboard standee. And personally, if I were to really get invested in a campaign-style board game, I really want it to come with like an absurd amount of miniatures for me to paint. If I'm not spending at least 5 times as much time painting the miniatures as playing the game, that's gonna be an issue. So imagine my surprise when Ross from Cephalofair Games reached out to me personally and told me that they are not only going to be producing a set of over 500 miniatures for Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, all the other Haven games, but also an entire RPG system to go with it, and also a second edition of Gloomhaven itself. And he was willing to send me some of these new miniatures to paint and check out. It's really hard to say no to that. So today I want to show you what they sent me, show you some of the new miniatures, show you some of the old miniatures, paint them up using a variety of methods, as well as my plans for playing Gloomhaven in the future. Before we go any further, I should probably give you some full disclosure on a few things. To be fully transparent, Cephalofair Games did not pay me to make this video, Squarespace did, but they did send me a ton of free product for painting and review purposes, including 6 samples of their brand new miniatures. And in return, I said I would be perfectly happy to feature these miniatures on the channel. It's something, again, I was planning on doing anyway, so it worked out really great for both of us. If you are interested in any of these new products, which they're calling the Gloomhaven Grand Festival, I have provided a link down in the description. So while there is some bias here, I did obviously receive a lot of nice free product. My intention with this video is not to convince you to play or buy Gloomhaven. It's a popular enough game that I feel like that would be kind of pointless anyway. The point of this video, as well as any future Gloomhaven videos that I might make, is to instead document my own thoughts on the game, the miniatures, and show you how I might paint them. So with all of that out of the way, let's get started. To start off, I took a look at all of the minis, both the ones from Jaws of the Lion, as well as the new sample miniatures from the upcoming miniatures set, to see if there were any mold lines that needed removing. And I was actually quite surprised at this point because I kind of assumed the new miniatures would be pretty much in line with the old player character miniatures that we get for all of the Gloomhaven games. But they're actually not. The new miniatures seem to me, at least, to be an upgrade in quality from the former player character minis. They're both definitely board game quality minis, but after comparing them, the new minis had significantly less mold lines, some nice pre-sculpted basing details, as well as a little bit more detail overall, and I think you'll be able to see this better as I'm painting them. Speaking of painting, I decided to paint all of these up in a standard sort of slap chop style, otherwise known as underpainting and glazing, because if I'm eventually going to be painting up 500 of these, I don't really want to be spending more than 30 minutes on each one, except for maybe the hero characters or boss monsters, stuff like that. And just talking about this made me realize how quick and easy it was to build my website using this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform that I personally have been using for over a decade now for all of my website needs. You just pick from one of their expertly designed website templates, add in any features or pages you might want, and then drag and drop in any extra elements you might need, adjusting things as you like using their incredibly intuitive drag and drop grid system. No coding or technical knowledge required. I've been using my current Squarespace website to post photos of my painted miniatures, reference documents for various paint lines, as well as any extra other stuff that I might want a home for, on the internet, and I've been really happy with the results so far. So if you'd like your own Squarespace website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your site, go to squarespace.com/DanaHowl for 10% off your very first purchase of a website or domain. And now back to painting miniatures. The first thing I did with all of these was give them a black prime, a white overspray, and then a quick dry brush of white paint to bring out all the details. And it was really at this stage that I became super aware of the difference in level of detail between the old Gloomhaven minis and the new ones. Like I said, these are still board game minis. They're pre-assembled, which isn't always a bad thing in my opinion, but they're definitely on the nicer side of board game minis, with a good amount of detail in each one that I think will work really well for a slap chop painting style. Here you can see I'm comparing them against the Jaws of the Lion minis, and hopefully you can see the difference in quality even at this stage. I also thought it would be helpful at this stage to compare these against the Nolzur's D&D minis, which are quite popular, both for scale as well as for level of detail, as aside from a few of the Gloomhaven exclusive things, almost all of the 500 miniatures here would be pretty useful just in your home D&D campaigns. So I wanted to see if the scale and style would line up with one of the most popular lines of D&D miniatures currently on the market. And good news, I found the scale was pretty comparable to the D&D minis that I own. Here you can see I'm comparing the Minsk and Boo figure from the D&D miniature painting set, as well as one of the only other Nolzur's minis that I own, I'm sorry about that, the nameless one from Planescape Torment. And if there's any fans of that franchise out there who are surprised that the nameless one got his own figure, it's pretty cool, right? I didn't realize that there was a figure of him either. And you can see that the scale as well as the level of detail here is pretty compatible. The only real difference being that the Gloomhaven minis are made from a bit more of a sturdier, harder plastic, whereas the Nolzur's minis, as you might be familiar with, are a little bit more bendy. And with all of that out of the way, let's actually get started painting. I started out painting one of the new minis, the Human Guard, using some Speedpaint 2.0 colors that I hadn't tried yet, as well as a few old favorites. And in general, I thought this worked pretty well. There's a good amount of texture to these models that makes painting in this style pretty easy and fun. Overall, this paint job took me about 45 minutes to do from start to finish, and I feel like it would probably take more like 30 minutes if I was batch painting like 6 of these. To contrast this, next I tried painting one of the Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion figures from the existing game using the very same methods. Again, this worked pretty well and was pretty easy to do, but I feel like this really proved my point, as when these two are both painted in the same style, you can really see the difference in the amount of sculpting detail between these two. After this, I tried painting another one of the new minis, the Algox Guard, which was one of the ones I was most excited to paint. I just love painting big beefy miniatures. I was quite looking forward to this, and I decided to try out some of these Speedpaint pastel paints that I personally had a hand in designing on this miniature. However, this was perhaps a good cautionary tale, as I forgot that even when designing some of these colors, I tested them out specifically on a white primer to get that pastel look. And I feel like over a zenithal or gray undercoat, they don't really work the way I was imagining. So if you are interested in some of the new pastels that we designed for Speedpaint 2.0, make sure to use them over a white undercoat, unless you want them to just be more of like a little filter on top of an existing color. So I wasn't super happy with how the Algox Guard turned out, but that wasn't really the fault of these minis or Speedpaints 2.0, it was really just me picking the wrong colors for the job. For the next one of these, I thought it might be interesting to try out regular acrylics over a zenithal instead of speed paints, just to compare what sort of results I could get in a similar amount of time. And if you're interested, the specific line of acrylics I'm using here are the Broken Anvil acrylic, which I did a full review on recently, link down in the description if you want to check that out. And overall, I think I spent maybe an extra 15 minutes painting the model this way, so a full hour compared to the 45 minutes that I spent on the speed painted guard. And taking a look at both, I feel like each painting style does have its merits. I like the contrast and vibrant colors I got on the speed painted guard, but I do like the matte finish a bit more on the standard acrylic painted model. Comparing these two, it really made me realize that I should be using both paint lines in tandem, so that's what I did for the rest of the figures. I used Speedpaint in places where it made the most sense, where I wanted to bring out some of that texture and get some darker highlights, and standard acrylics over more wide, flat surfaces where I wanted a more matte look and more gradual highlights. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed checking out this new line of miniatures with me today, and seeing the various speed painting styles that I applied to all of the models. I apologize in advance if this video was a little bit simple, but next week we are literally moving, so thank you as always to all of our lovely patrons for your continuous support on Patreon. It really helps a lot, especially right now when we are undergoing a move. The next time you see me, we will not be in this room. Probably. This week I would especially like to thank one especially generous patron, Razor Fox Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.